Solo board gaming night here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Zombicide 2nd Edition. As always, I'm going to give you an overhead view of the table so you get an idea of how much space the game takes up. This is a medium-sized map. There is a larger map which adds an additional 3 tiles to what you see here. There are also smaller maps that have fewer tiles than what you see here. Overall, the game does take a decent amount of space. With that out of the way, let's look at the box and the components. The box art of Zombicide has a really vibrant and colorful comic book feel to it. The picture is the same on all sides except for the back, which shows you what's inside the box and what the game is about. Inside the box, you're going to find another box that's actually going to contain an insert with all of the miniatures and a place where the cards are stored, as well as the player boards. Setup and teardown is really important to me, and I knew I was going to need to make some changes if I wanted to decrease the amount of time I spent doing that and increase the amount of time I spent playing the game. I used a craft box to store all the figures that were available in Zombicide. I also have a quick video showing you a storage solution and how you could get everything stored inside the box. Also, the insert I used to be able to hold the cards are very useful, and I have a video for that as well. The survivors and kids that you play as have lively poses that bring their characters to life. There are several different types of walkers as well that really help sell the zombie apocalypse vibe the game is striving for. There are also several different poses and types of runner zombies available. It really does give a lively feel to the different types of zombies you could find. The menacing looking fatties and abominations also ramp up the tension every time they show up on the board. All figures have great quality and look amazing on the table. Taking a look at the rulebook itself, once again, is really vibrant and colorful. There's 35 pages of actual rules that you have to read. In between, there's a lot of great looking illustrations, as well as very detailed descriptions on how to play the game and how the mechanics in the game work itself. From page 36 and beyond is where you'll find all of the missions available to you. There are a total of 25 missions, 10 which are remade from the original Zombicide, and 15 that are brand new to Zombicide 2nd Edition. The last few pages give you detailed descriptions on what every skill does, as well as an index. Finally, the back page will give you a very useful player reference. To be honest, I didn't know how I was going to feel about Zombicide. See, the thing is, when I first played Zombicide, it was actually in mobile form. And to be honest, I don't know if it was the lack of physicality, but the digital version of Zombicide really didn't do much for me at all. It fell flat and it kind of turned me off to Zombicide. It wasn't until Marvel Zombies actually showed up that really made me want to give Zombicide a second look and see if whether or not Zombicide was the type of game that I would enjoy playing. Before playing, choose which survivors you want to play as. Choose a color base along with a tracker of the same color, as well as a character board and a character ID card. Behind the character ID card, you're going to be able to find their special abilities and a description of how their special ability is used. After deciding which mission you want to go on, follow the scenario setup located in the back of the rulebook. After you set up the map, place any zombies on the map as instructed on the scenario setup. Finally, place all of your survivors at the starting point on the map. Any objectives and special rules you need to know will be located in the scenario setup page. Each round consists of 3 phases: the player phase, the zombie phase, and the end phase. Every survivor randomly receives a starter card. The survivor that received the fire axe goes first. During the player phase, each survivor will take up to 3 actions. The player phase ends once each survivor has been activated. You may use one action to move adjacent one space orthogonally. You may use an action to open doors. Dice are not rolled to open doors. However, if the weapon you use to open the door makes noise, you need to place a noise token on your space. The item card will show you if you're allowed to use it to open a door and if it will make noise when you use that action. When opening doors to a building for the first time, you have to spawn zombies in every dark zone inside the building. The rulebook recommends to start with the dark zone furthest from the player. To spawn zombies, draw a card from the zombie deck. The player with the highest adrenaline level will determine how many zombies will spawn. In this example, I drew the Walker Rush. Every zombie spawned with this card will immediately activate. In this case, 3 walkers will spawn and immediately activate on the board. After I spawn the walkers, I will go ahead and immediately activate them. I'll go ahead and repeat that same process, this time for the second room. I drew a runner, so I will spawn 1 runner in the room as well. You can also use an action to either take or activate an objective. I can take an action to take this pimp crate. I remove the pimp crate off the board. Then I draw a card from the pimp crate deck. Depending which card I draw, I could choose to either place it in my inventory slot or equip it by reorganizing my current items at hand. There is a risk, however. Sometimes when you're searching for an item, you can accidentally draw what's called an A card. When that happens, you place a walker in your zone and then discard the card. As you can tell, this could really ruin your well-laid plans. When in a building zone without a zombie, you can use one action point to do a search action. To do so, you draw a card from the item deck, and depending what you draw from that item deck, once again, you could either place it in your inventory slot or equip it in one of your hands. Just as with the pimp crates, you run a risk of accidentally drawing an A card. Once again, placing a walker in your zone instead, giving you a really, really bad day. You can use an action to reorganize the items currently equipped or in your inventory. Also, you could, if you're on the same space with another survivor, trade with them. To reorganize, you simply go ahead and reorganize whatever item you want in whichever way you want. However, to trade with the survivor, you simply just trade whichever number of items you want. You can use an action to attack a zombie that is on your same space or within range. The bottom left of the item card lets you know whether you're using a ranged weapon or a melee weapon. It will also let you know if the weapon you're using makes noise, or in the case of the fire axe, is silent when attacking a zombie with it. The icons located below the weapon show you the range, how many dice you roll, what you need to roll to succeed, and how much damage you give on a successful roll. The rulebook does a really great job giving you many examples of how line of sight works. From there, roll the dice, and depending on the results of the dice will determine how much damage you give a zombie. Each dice is like 1 bullet each. Depending on which type of zombie you killed will determine how many adrenaline points you earn. The amount of adrenaline points you earn are located both in the rulebook as well as the player reference in the back of the rulebook. Be aware when using a ranged weapon in a space with another survivor, you may damage them due to friendly fire. When more than one zombie is in one zone, there is a targeting priority that you can find in the player reference guide. You may want to use an action to simply make some noise and attract some zombies to your location. Or you may simply just decide to do nothing on your turn. During the zombie phase, every zombie on the board will activate. The first thing they'll do is attack. If a zombie is in a zone with any other survivors, they're going to attack any survivor on their space. In this example, I had Ned be the survivor that took the damage. Keep in mind, if any one survivor would lose all of their health points, you will fail the mission and lose the game. Once every zombie that shares a space with the survivor attacks the survivor, every other remaining zombie on the board will activate. When zombies do not have a survivor in their line of sight, they will use their sense of sound to follow them. In this case, these zombies will actually move towards the loudest part of the board. Runner zombies are faster versions of regular zombies. After all zombies have moved on the board, rushers get a second activation. In that case, runners either move one space or attack a survivor on any given space. In this example, Josh was attacked by the runner. Once all zombies have activated, starting with the first spawn point and working clockwise around the board, you begin to spawn zombies. Draw a card from the zombie deck, and depending on which survivor has the highest amount of adrenaline level, you'll spawn that amount of zombies. In this case, one runner will spawn at the first spawn point. For the second spawn point, once again, we'll draw a zombie card from the zombie deck. A walker will spawn on that point. Grab a walker and simply place them on that spawn point. Once you've spawned all the zombies, you move on to the end phase where you remove all the noise tokens from the board. From there, you keep repeating rounds until you've either completed the mission or failed and lost the game. Unfortunately, there's an error printed in the player reference in back of the rulebook. To pick up a pimp weapon crate, it does not use a search action. It actually uses a take action. Now, there's some other rules that I really didn't get into, and I did that on purpose for the sake of time. Mainly the line of sight, how that works, and the vehicle. However, the reason I mentioned the vehicle is because I really love the mechanics of the vehicle. It really is a highlight of how the game, when you're running over zombies inside the vehicle, it's absolutely satisfying. So much fun. I cannot emphasize how much fun it is to drive around the vehicle down the city streets. It's so cool. I love it. Definitely one of the highlights of the game. But there are other rules that this game involves. However, although there are a lot of rules that you have to learn, the rule book is packed with all sorts of rules. I promise you that as you keep playing the game and you start learning how to play it, it starts making sense. It's easy to learn, easy to understand, and it has a great index behind in the back of the rule book or the last page of the rule book that actually really helps guide you where you need to go. So if you need to have a question about how movement works, you just look for movement and you're good. So I just want to take that out of the way. Right now, I actually want to talk about the actual art of the game itself. One of the things that actually stood out to me is I actually like the art. It has a nice comic book feel to it. But what I like most about it is that every character is drawn in a way that gives it personality. It gives it life, if that makes sense. Just by looking at the characters, you could kind of tell what type of personality they have. And it's magnified by the type of abilities they have as well. It really does a great job, not only looking good, but also bringing the characters to life. Another thing I want to talk about, even the item cards themselves, they may look simple, and they are, but it's the nice little touches like the zombies creeping up in the background and how the iconography is so easily laid out. Nothing in the cards or none of this information feels overbearing. It's all easy to read, and I really appreciate that. Another thing I wanted to talk about the art before I move on is the actual art on the board. Now, it's basically just buildings and city streets, okay? However, there's a lot of little detail throughout all of the tiles that if you really look closely, it feels like a nice touch. It feels like a nice touch, and it really makes it feel like each building has its own individual rooms, and you could tell when there's a dining room, you could tell where there's a bathroom. It's touches like that I personally really appreciate it. I especially like the way that the zombie cards looked in the back. Every time I draw one, I kind of I like looking at it, but it freaks me out. But when an abomination, look, I did that on accident. I didn't know it was an abomination, but when you draw an abomination card, for example, that looks menacing. It looks really menacing, and it's all thanks to the actual art direction. I think the art was really well done, and it conveyed the feeling of the zombie apocalypse really well. And moving from the art, I'm going to go straight to the theme itself. Zombicide's theme works really well in this game. It really gives you the sense of being overrun, overwhelmed with zombies, with a horde of zombies. I like that a lot of missions are about trying to find resources. There's other missions that are really... it's not really a spoiler because it's not like a campaign type of story, although you could kind of follow it like a story, I guess you could say, but you could also play them individually and you wouldn't know any better. But there are some missions, for example, that have you clearing out certain areas from zombies and then removing the spawn points to help clear areas out. I thought those were amongst the best missions, and I just want to let you know I placed here the tutorial mission only because it's easier to show on camera, because this game is giant. This is a very small map. However, there are maps here that could take up the entire width of my table, and my table's wide, very wide. So because of that, I chose this to be able to talk about the game better, and you could have a clearer view of the actual table. But wow, they could get huge. But there's some maps in there that have you doing things from driving the vehicles, maybe taking the vehicles to a certain spot. But the ones that I really enjoyed are when you're clearing parts of the map out. Oh, I just loved it. It was so good and so thematic. It really felt like back when I used to like The Walking Dead. I felt that feeling of being overrun and overwhelmed by zombies, and this game just, they did that with spades. The theme in this game is great. The types of missions that I played really did feel like something that could possibly happen in real life. One thing that I did like, I'm gonna have to bring them over because I didn't play with any of them in this particular mission, but I have played them. There are kids involved in this game, and I like that they added kids. And the reason that I like that kids were added was because if we were to really have to go through the zombie apocalypse, every man, woman, and child are going to have to fend for themselves. And the fact that they actually added kids here really added to the sense of, hey, this is a zombie apocalypse, or a zombicide, you could say, right? And I just liked how they implemented the kids. They were weaker. And in that case, you had to be careful with them, but they were also quicker. And it fits the theme because kids are smaller. They could squeeze through smaller spaces and move around quicker. Yeah, they have weapons and whatnot, but I mean, come on. In a real zombie apocalypse, if that were to be real, I would literally teach my kids how to defend themselves That's some real world stuff. So I thought that the fact that they put that in there was great. And of course, this isn't real world stuff. This is just pretend. But I like that they added it because it added an extra layer of theme to the game that I appreciated. I didn't expect it, but I appreciated it. But overall, when it comes to the actual missions, the way you're feeling overwhelmed by zombies, and you could get really overwhelmed by zombies, this did a great job giving that feel, that theme of zombies. Now, moving over to the gameplay, there's some things I really want to bring to your attention. Namely, there is some fiddliness when it comes to this game, and a lot of it comes with not only the zombies themselves, because there are a lot of zombies that could come out. Thankfully, you could distinguish them all rather easily, simply because the walkers are of one color, okay? And the walkers are the ones that are going to just move one space at a time, okay? One zone at a time. And then we have the runners, which are much more agile and can activate twice. But if you put them next to each other, like this, for example, you could tell that one is clearly darker than the other. So you could tell who the walkers are and who the actual runners are. And that's really, really important in this game because there are times where you're going to see a lot of zombies on the board. And you're going to have to be able to manage where they're going to move, where they're going to go. And it could get overwhelming. It really, once again, this is a small map. And being the tutorial mission, this is nothing. There's a map that I played that had 9 tiles in total, the whole entire length of my table, width of my table. And it was insane. Absolutely insane. And when the zombies were coming, they were really coming at us hard. They were relentless. And I just felt that that was a little fiddly. Also, every weapon that you have tells you whether or not it makes noise. In this case, the shotgun, when you use it, it's going to make a noise. Okay? So every time you use a shotgun, let's say you're standing here and Doug had a shotgun and he used a shotgun. You're going to place a noise token wherever you use the shotgun. If you use the shotgun again on your turn, you're going to go ahead and place another noise token. Noise tokens are important because zombies tend to go towards the noisiest part of the map. Okay? And sometimes you could use that to your advantage. Although, like I said, it is fiddly because especially when you're first learning how to play the game, I guarantee you're going to be using weapons that are noisy or using equipment or items that are noisy, and you're not going to be adding those noise tokens to the board. I almost could guarantee you that because you just have to kind of get used to it. So there is fiddliness when it comes to that. You do get used to it. The zombie movement, you do have to get used to that, especially the runners. When after they all move, runners activate a second time. So that's another thing you have to keep a handle on. Another thing you have to keep your mind on are the actual abominations themselves. In the rulebook, they let you know what each abomination actually does because they all have special abilities. Okay, and it's good to know what those special abilities are because that's yet another thing you have to keep track of. Apart from the 6 survivors you're constantly looking at, and you're keeping track of all of their abilities as well, there's a lot that you have to keep track of in this game. Now, it's kind of not impossible, but it just is a lot to have to take care of at one time if you're not used to that kind of thing. What I do like is that once you do get used to actually using the noise tokens, for example, I like how you could get yourself out of a very difficult situation simply by creating a lot of noise in one area, having the zombies all go towards that one area, and then going out of a building into another part of the city. I think that's great because it feels like a real zombie movie where you're calling their attention and then like just tricking them and going out the other way through the back door or something. I love that. But it's fiddly. Moving the zombies around are fiddly, and those noise tokens could be fiddly. It's not terrible, but it's just something I have to mention. Also, something else you might find useful is in order to help keep track of which survivor is actually activated, I have these exhaust tokens that I usually use from the Funkoverse games I have, but you could use any type of token you have. Every time I've used up all of a character's actions, I just go ahead and place an exhausted token on that, and that's just letting me know I've already depleted all of their actions and that character cannot go anymore this round. Keep that in mind. That's a tip that could be very helpful. It definitely helped me, and it made playing the game a lot more enjoyable because I didn't have to worry about keeping track of who went and who didn't. One thing I want to talk about is the actual difficulty itself. This game could be extremely challenging, extremely punishing, and you could be finding yourself in situations that just seem and feel impossible. Now, the rulebook does have a page that lets you know how you can adjust the difficulty, and you could remove cards from your zombie deck to make the game either easier or more difficult. Personally, for myself, I wanted the zombie apocalypse feeling, so I threw everything inside the deck, and I just wanted to get the game to give me all it had, and it gave me all it had. There were times where it would be very early on. I would open a building, a door, only to have an abomination show up right then and there. And abominations need 3 damage to knock them down. There's no way, there's no weapon that you have so early on that could take on an abomination. That is terrible to happen. Once something like that happens to you, if you get unlucky somewhere else, you can find yourself in a world of hurt. I personally didn't mind it. I found it funny. I found it enjoyable because, well, I mean, if it was a zombie apocalypse and that, what are you going to say? Oh, there's too many zombies there. Please be fair to me. It's not going to happen. So I personally didn't mind, but just know that if you find the game overly difficult, too punishing, know that you could remove the cards and just follow that page in the rulebook that shows you how to adjust the difficulty to make the game more to your liking. So you don't have to play a game if you hate the way something's going, how it's going. If you can move it and the game's saying, well, you could get rid of it, by all means. If that makes you have a better time playing the game, do so. And I do actually like that the game gives you that option. On to the fun factor of Zombicide 2nd Edition. Now, I really did like it, especially when it came to the mechanics of the vehicles and how the vehicles could drive down the streets. Keep in mind, the map gets really big, so when you're driving down the street, even though it's 2 spaces at a time, it feels really, really cool. I really like that mechanic. I also really enjoyed the clearing out missions. I can't emphasize that enough. That was so much fun as well. So there were a lot of really great things going on. I love the theme. I love how you have to sometimes use the noise tokens to outsmart the zombies and make your way around and go behind them or whatnot. That's fun. However, after hearing so much praise for Zombicide over the last year and a half or so, I think I expected more. I think maybe my expectations might have been too high. That although I enjoyed the game, it never reached that peak, that point that made me feel like I was having a blast. I was having a good time. But it wasn't what I was expecting, I guess. And maybe it's because I had my expectations too high. I'm not sure. But overall, although I thought Zombicide 2nd Edition was a good game, it's actually a really good game, I never thought it was a great game. I'm really glad I gave Zombicide 2nd Edition a chance because it was able to answer the question that I personally had. I was on the fence about this Marvel Zombicide and I didn't know how much to actually back. After playing Zombicide 2nd Edition, I have a good idea of how much would be enough for me. And in this case, I think I'm just going to go with the Resistance Pledge, the one that has the core box and the X-Men box. That's going to be more than enough game for me, especially when you include all of the stretch goals and everything that comes with that. That's going to be more than enough to keep me feeling happy. I really had fun with Zombicide 2nd Edition. It didn't rock my world, it didn't blow me away. There's a lot of board games that I would choose over this, but I'm glad that I played it, and I will come back to it. And overall, I had a good time, and that's what counts. I enjoyed my time with Zombicide 2nd Edition. With that said, it's a solo board gaming night. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great game night. Take care.